So there was actually a pretty good question in here from Alexandra. She says, I still haven't got my head around this overlap between historical and mythical and how both of those categories are real. They clearly are, but do we mean the same thing by real in each case? I don't know. What does real mean?
Yeah.
I mean,
here's what I'll say, Alexandra, is to me, what we call historical, okay, and what we call mythical are ultimately two different tones or voices, as it were, of doing the same thing, right? They're both telling stories that are about how we got here. And the here is not just like how was mankind created? That's definitely an important myth. It's important history, but also how we got here. Like, why is our culture doing what it does? Why do we think the way we think? Why do we talk the way that we talk? Right? That is what all of history and myth is, but they have different kind of tones to them.
Yeah.
Like the way that we tell stories that we classify as myths has a particular character. And we do it for particular purposes. We want people to listen in a certain way when we tell the story that way. So, for instance, I'll give you an example of a story that I'm working on, and I'm not going to tell you what. I mean, I mentioned it last time, but like I could begin by giving a historical approach and saying something like, okay, there are certain legends found in the Jewish Talmud that Jonah may have been one of the boys raised by either Elijah or Elisha. I could say that. That is a very historical kind of tone, right? Or I could also say, it is told in the tales of the Judeans how there was once a prophet who died thrice. You know, and that's a very different mode of storytelling. And I'm trying to accomplish something different with that. I'm telling you about how this means something for us now in a different way.
I think a helpful way to think about this is if you want to use a visual metaphor in terms of distance and perspective. So let's say that you're at a little country house or like little ranch or just a little country house out somewhere in the country. Maybe one of those beautiful Lithuanian farmsteads that we visited, Father Andrew, which reminded me very much of certain places in East Texas that I grew up in. So let's say you're walking up the road to this little cottage, and there's a farmstead, and let's say there's a tree overhanging the path, and there's some beehives off to one side. And if you're at a certain distance from that, say several hundred yards away, you can make out the most important details. So you have the cottage, you have the stork nest, you have the beehives, and you have the tree overhanging the path, right? Well, if you stay at that distance and you paint a picture, is that a true picture? Of course it is. Of course it is. Yeah. Now, if you walk closer to the house, you're going to notice, oh, there's a little stream right here that I couldn't see because of the distance that I had. And, oh, there's some garbage out that somebody needs to take out. Oh, I didn't see some of these messy details here. And, oh, one of the beehives is kind of falling apart. And, oh, there's some baby storks in the stork nest. And, oh, and so as you get closer, you see more and more details, and some of them might actually make the thing more beautiful, but some of them are also like ugly or messy, right? Yeah. And so if you get close to the house and you paint another picture and you incorporate all these other little details in, is that picture true? Also, yes. Now, which of those pictures is more true? Well, that's a nonsensical proposition, because the picture that was farther away, which is myth, has captured everything that is essential about it's captured everything that's essential about the frame, about the story of this location, about what it is at this particular moment in time. As you get closer, you get more details. Are those details, does that make the picture better or worse? Well, it just depends on what you want to do with it. Yeah. And that's the difference between the relationship between myth and history. I am not the sort of person who will read a myth about like the Aeneid, right? And will go, well, Aeneas probably never existed. Like, who is that for? Like, I've never understood. Modern scholars do this thing all the time, and I don't know who that's for. Like, what do you mean he didn't exist? He has a poem written about him. Right. like I have no poetry written about my deeds. And so like.
He exists
so
more than you do.
Yeah, it's like, what do you mean he didn't exist? Like, he exists in the memory of his people, Now, does this mean that, if you were following him, from the Bosphorus to Italy with a video camera, that you're going to see everything that's depicted in the Aeneid? Well, no, I'm not saying that. But the point is that myth is a true way of seeing the world, and it's often more useful in the sense that it gives you the broad strokes and shows you like what's really actually important about something. Whereas with history, especially as the history gets closer and closer and closer to us, you have all of these details about economics and other things that are not important. And you get all these little details, and those details are interesting. I mean, you have to write your dissertation about something. But ultimately, they're not actually the things that are most important about that story. And this is something that our mutual friend Matthew Namey and I have talked about a lot, including on a couple of podcasts, is like when you're telling the history of the 20th century, how would you tell the history of the 20th century? Well, you could tell it the way that we're telling it now, which is basically doing like socioeconomic storytelling, where we're like, oh, there's these people, and then there was these economic factors, et cetera, et cetera. You could also tell the story of the 20th century through the eyes of the saints, that there were saints living in the 20th century, Saint Maria of Paris, Saint Paisios, Saint John of Shanghai, and San Francisco, who are literal gods walking the earth, right? Who are communing with God, who are communing with Christ, who are having conversations with the Mother of God and with the other saints, right? And their prayers and actions and deeds are actually the most important things that are happening in the world at that time. Now, that second way of telling the story is a more mythic way of telling the story.
Yep.
And we have our own myths, like our own secular myths about the struggle between good and evil during the 20th century with, fascism and communism and so on. But that's also a myth. That's also a myth. If you actually get down in the weeds and the details of things, it becomes very complicated, very
yes, very.
And what we really want to do is, feel like we're the good guys, we are on the right side, right? In any case, that's the difference between myth and history. It's about distance and it's about perspective. And sometimes myth tells you more and tells you at least more of what is really important to you if you're trying to sort yourself out and know who you are and where you belong in the world.